Okay, so now you've got this message for active recruiting that's built on ICBI. You know what you want to say, but how are you going to get that message across? How you convey your message is going to vary tremendously. It's going to be based on a variety of factors, including your school, the setting, the situation, the course that you're trying to recruit for. But still, some things that you'll want to keep in mind as you convey your messages will be similar. The first thing that we want to say is to avoid myth busting. So be extremely careful about what we've been calling planting weeds. So try not to take this approach of myth busting. Try not to use those code words that people always use about how computing is for people who are geeks, nerds, or code monkeys. In other words, do not repeat a stereotype in order to say that it's wrong. Maybe the student wasn't actually conscious of the stereotype before. And now what you've said is that everybody else thinks that computer scientists are geeks who work in cubicles and that they just call them code monkeys, but that's wrong. That's not really the case. What might actually stick is geeks, cubicles, and code monkeys. So now you've said that everyone else thinks this, but it's not true. But you have to know that you might not be all that convincing to them. And instead, a better approach is to recognize what those stereotypes are when you're communicating with students. Know them in your own mind, but do not repeat them. You should counter them though. So if people think that computer scientists are only interested, for example, in a very narrow definition of computing, then what you want to do with your role models, for example, is to show your students people who are computing students or computing professionals, experts, who have a wide range of computing interests and experiences. When you think about where to get your messages across, where to locate your audience, well, you should start by thinking about places on campus where you might have access to some of these audiences. So, for example, your undecided students in your intro courses, in service courses. You may have students who are upper level or whom you know who are members of student organizations, and ask them to put posters in student organization rooms or other places on campus. Places like student centers, women's centers, these are really good locations to try and direct your attention to attracting people to your course. Now, there are other places that you can think about off campus. For example, high schools. If you go for a sort of major night, potential major night at high schools, talk to teachers that you know in there. The feeder schools that are for your college. Talk to counselors. Counselors are always a good place to start that active recruiting process. Local organizations and education and career development programs. Now, we know that you can't do all this yourself, given your other responsibilities, so do enlist support. NCWIT has a strategic planning guide where there is help for how to utilize people already on campus to reach groups and how to give messages on your behalf. But the best bet here is to inform others so that they can keep on giving the message for you without you actually having to always be the one to do it yourself.